What's up YouTube, it's Tom here. We've just taken the delivery of this brand new Volkswagen long wheelbase transporter and we're going to be converting that into a camper van. So if you guys are trying to convert your cars at home into camper vans, follow this video and we'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to do so. We're going to cover things like sound deadening and insulation in the walls of the car, as well as the electrical system and the plumbing. We're going to be building drawers and cupboards to come out of this door to create a kitchen. So if you guys are interested in any of that stuff, stay tuned and check out the episodes ahead. Alright, so here we are at the back of the van. Now we're going to have a bed that's sitting roughly around this height here, and underneath that I've chosen to have one big drawer coming out. Now the reason for that is I work as a carpenter during the day as my job, and I'm going to need somewhere to store all my big bulky gear. Now a lot of people do two drawers and it's really just up to your own personal preference. On the side of the van here above the bed we're going to have a cupboard that goes from there to the ceiling, and that's going to give us somewhere to store things that we need to access easily every day, like our clothes. There's a little shelf going here with all our switches and USB ports going there as well. That's going to give us somewhere to charge our phones and stuff of an evening whilst we're in bed. At the end of the cupboard it's going to turn into a bench top that's going to go down and turn around across the back of those seats. So why don't we jump down to the side of the van and check that out. So now to the side of the van. So the kitchen's going to be one big drawer that pulls all the way out. That's going to give us the ability to cook outside the van as well as cooking inside the van in case we're camping in a spot where we don't really want to be seen. Now we're going to have a 2.5 by 2.5 metre King's awning on the roof racks, and that's going to pull out to give us plenty of undercover cooking protection, but also somewhere to chill in the sun on a hot day. Now we're going to have a seat inside the van about here where the bed folds over. That's going to give us again somewhere to sit inside the van when we're just trying to eat some food or something maybe where we don't want to be seen. That's also going to give us somewhere to put the water tank, which will be installed in the middle of the car near the rear axle so we can keep that weight down nice and low. The walls of the van are going to be V-joint pine. It's going to be painted white to give us a nice real big open feel to the van. And the ceiling we're going to finish with a cedar. It's not only a really light material, but it's also going to give us a really nice finish that I think is going to set this van apart. Alright guys, so we're inside the van now. Now the first job after you've stripped all the ceiling lining and wall panels that come with the van out, we're going to need to cut all our penetrations. Now we've got a penetration for the roof fan. We're going to have two electrical penetrations through the roof, and we've also got two water outlets we're going to put over on this wall here. So let's go ahead and start measuring all those out. Alright, so that's the last of the roof penetrations done. Probably the scariest part we're going to do on the van. So up there we've got the power for the light bar going at the front, and also the light bar, the light in the awning. This is going to be the skylight, and then this is going to be the power for the solar panel. So we can't just leave the metal like this. We're going to have to file all these burrs off, and we're going to spray it with some cold gal. It's just going to preserve the metal so it can't rust out over time. Alright guys, so now we've got all our penetrations all cleaned up with the files, so there's no more burrs on any of the edges, so it's quite smooth when you run your fingers along there. Now the next step's going to be to clean around the penetrations, not only for the gluing down of the products, but we're also going to spray the metal that we've just exposed with some, I've chosen cold gal, but really just any sort of paint to seal that metal from corrosion in the future, because after time it will rust out. So we've really got to protect the new roof of that from happening. So I've just chosen a wax and grease remover. It's pretty much just a surface prep for the paint, and also then too for our sealant that we're going to use around our penetrations. So I'm just going to go on and clean all these up, and then we'll get to the next step. Alright guys, so now we've got all that prepped up ready for paint. And now you'll see that I've only put the blue tape just a tiny little bit away from the edge. I'm not trying to put this paint underneath where we're going to be gluing the roof vent from or the penetrations. It's more just to seal that metal. So once we do that, we can then move the tape back for when we go up to glue. Alright, so now we'll go do the same from underneath, and then we're going to let that dry, and then we can install our parts. Alright, so we finally let that dry enough, so now we're ready to put this on. So we're going to do that. We're going to use this, a sealant here, and it's a solvent-free sealant. I highly recommend using a solvent-free sealant, purely because if you use one that's got solvents in it, it can eat at the paint that you're sticking to, and we don't want that because that's going to cause water problems later on in life. So we just apply this all the way around it, making sure you go over the screw holes. That way, once we put the screws in, we're going to get a nice seal around that screw. Awesome, so you'll have a nice bead all the way around your roof fan now. And so we're just going to flip that over and into the hole. Okay, cool, there we go. Now you'll notice the roof has some uneven sections on it, so we're just gonna pump it with sealant all the way around again, and then we'll clean that off nicely and screw it off, and then that's all done. Okay, so now a good tip, once you've pumped it with the sealant all the way around, before you screw it off, which is gonna make it squeeze out, we're just gonna spray it with some soapy water. That way, anything the sealant hasn't already stuck to, it's gonna give a soap layer between that so you can just wipe it off nice and clean. All right, so now all your sealant's squeezed out after you screwed it off. What you're gonna wanna do is get something of like a cup, like the lid of this spray can or a coffee cup works really well. And it's just gonna collect all the sealant as you go around and leave you with a nice chamfered edge. All right guys, so it got a little bit dark last night, so I didn't really quite get to show you me finishing off the Sikaflex, but all I did was I just went around and put a little dab of Sikaflex on all the screw holes, this ensuring there's no little divots for water to sit in and create water issues later. Now it all turned out really well, I'm really actually quite happy with it. So we'll just recap on a few things we used and a few things we did to help us make that little process a bit easier. So once we marked out all the penetrations, and we did that especially with the ceiling fan, I wanted that in the middle of the roof. So I first found center, and then I came off half the opening size each side, giving it a full opening. And I've just added a little bit extra. That way when I go to slide it in from the top, it just slides in nice and easy and it's not too tight. So after we marked it out, I went through and I drilled out all the corners with this 10mm drill bit. That's just giving us somewhere to start and stop our jigsaw cuts, and it's just gonna make things a lot easier later on. Now, you're gonna wanna use a jigsaw, and you're gonna wanna make sure it has a metal blade in it. Now, the metal blade's gonna be the one with all the fine, really small teeth, and that will give you a really nice cut through the metal. Now, you might be wondering, why are we using a jigsaw and not a grinder? Well, if we were to use a grinder on the roof, when we're cutting, we're gonna produce a lot of sparks. Now, if those sparks land on either the windows or the paint, it's gonna melt in as it's really hot metal, and later on, it's gonna create a rust spot, also known as a hot spot. So we're really trying to not use any grinding or any sparks whilst we're building the van. This is just to limit any damage that could potentially happen. Now, if you don't get a really straight cut with your jigsaw, don't worry. Get a file, and you can start with a really rough one if it's really not too straight, and just go through and straighten them out before you get rid of your burrs. Now, this file has a really rough surface. One's flat and one's rounded. And so the rounded side is actually really good for getting into your corners with and just fixing them and cleaning them up a little bit. And then I went through with this slightly finer file just to give it a nice finish after I was done with all of that. And so guys, I hope that really helped you out with your ceiling penetrations and your roof fan. And so stay tuned for the next episode where we'll get into some of the stuff inside the van. So don't forget guys, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode.